Hi guys, here we are with this last final chapters of The Enlightened Gardener. What a wonderful read. And a couple of points I wanted to highlight that really spoke to me with these chapters. So I was really struck by the chapter with a prophecy where Sid was so certain that this understanding would transform psychology and psychiatry in the 1970s and totally transform the way that we considered mental health. Now, it didn't pan out that way, but the seeds were sown in the 70s with all those amazing teachers that many of whom are still part of our teaching in our world today, who learned directly from Sid and now doing their best to pass on their understanding to us, who are trying to pass on our understanding to you, and slowly but surely, the benefits of understanding this work of Sid's understanding, it cannot help at some point to become, in my mind, hopefully the prevalent treatment for anxiety, stress, depression. All psychiatric facilities hopefully will have this understanding at the heart of them at some point, just because the effectiveness of it will become apparent and obvious. But to summarize, really, he says it will be a psychology that will differ from most present-day concepts, and that it will help individuals to realize the mental health they already have inside of them. So traditional psychology is all about examining the problems to try and fix the problems, because when we fix the problems, then you'll find mental health. Like, mental health is the other side of fixing the problem. And the 3 principles is very much pointing to the fact that we are innately healthy, that mental health is our birthright, that it's never actually gone anywhere. It's just sitting there waiting to reveal itself, which it does over and over and over again. No matter how disturbed our minds, our mental health is irrepressible. It just keeps showing up, whether it's in a moment of laughter, a moment of being touched by a precious moment, a moment of awe at a sunset, a moment of enjoyment of a piece of music, a moment of being totally immersed in the work that we're doing or the conversation with the person in front of us. That's our mental health, 100, 1,000 times a day. No matter how low you feel, no matter how stressed or anxious or panicky you get, it keeps showing up for you to notice. And all that happens is that as we start to understand this, we start to notice it more. And we start to realize when we see it showing up again and again and again, we may have the insight that it never went anywhere. It's always been there, just waiting for us to notice it. That all the hard work and striving we've been doing to try and create this thing called mental health has all been in vain, and that's why it hasn't worked. It's because there's nothing we can do to create it. It's already there. So it'd be like trying to run around trying to create our own skin. It would be a futile exercise. You'd wonder why it isn't working, and then hopefully at some point you'd see you didn't have to. It was your birthright to have skin and mental health. And I love this. Andy is a very quiet and private person, and he rarely talks to anyone the way he's been talking with you doctors. And that's true of Sid as well. It's like he didn't spend his whole life talking about the principles, although you might think that he did, because all we get to see is the videos and the tapes and the books. But from those who knew him, Sid didn't. He spent a lot of time, he'd have people around for barbecues, and he'd spend time talking about his garden or going for beautiful walks and pointing out bits of the nature on Salt Spring Island. And then very small amounts of the time he'd spend teaching and sharing his understanding of the principles. But 99% of the time was just spent enjoying life, encouraging others to do the same. That's where we get to see the truth of the principles for real for ourselves, is in life, actually, not through studying more videos and more books and more all the rest of it. A little bit of understanding goes a really long way. And then finally, if you listen very closely to what Andy is saying, you'll see that he always talks in the impersonal, and the impersonal suits every person on earth. So quite often when we are looking at traditional psychology, the focus is all on the individual. It's on your experience, the content of your thinking, how you are processing and using your thinking, and how you could be doing it more wisely, what's going on in the circumstances of your life. And our questions when we're suffering are always about me. But what about me? And when they do that, it makes me feel like that. And how do I show up differently to that? And how can I earn more money? And how can I make them behave differently? And how can I change my job? What should I do about my job? The questions are all about ourselves. Like me, 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 me. When we're caught up in struggling. And psychology, traditional psychology, dives deep into that and starts analysing our experience, like how the world looks to us. And if you sit with someone who understands the principles, yes, like with my clients, I am interested in how they see the world. I want to see and understand how the world looks to them. That's true. But I'm listening to that in order to point to what's true for all people, for all human beings, how their experience is created, and their true nature. And that's true for all of us. There are no exceptions. These are principles, right? There are no exceptions to how our experience is created and who and what we really are. And so when you listen to Sid or you read Sid's books, you'll see he's always talking in the impersonal. He's never talking about you and your problem and your marriage or your thinking. He's talking about thought, he's talking about mind, he's talking about consciousness and the interplay of those three things for all human beings. So if you're getting confused and caught up and how does this apply to me? It's like there's two classes in school. One is all about me and my psychology and the way I use thought and my life and my events and my experience and my suffering. And there's another class over here where they're teaching the principles of astrophysics, right? It's that different. And these are you'd sit in the class about astrophysics and you would just learn the facts and you'd be blown away and touched and moved and amazed by the facts of astrophysics and look and see the truth of them. You wouldn't take it personally. You wouldn't be thinking, well, how does that apply to me? You'd be open to learning something you knew nothing about learning something new you could see the person knew what they were talking about, that they had this understanding of astrophysics. And so you're in the astrophysics class to learn more about that, totally openly, totally impersonally. Yeah, I'm interested, teach me. Versus, how does that apply to me? But what about this situation? Yeah, but it doesn't look like that to me. Yeah, but we think we know something about our own psychology and our own suffering and our own. But in truth, before we bump into this understanding, we never heard of this stuff before. We never heard that our experience is created from the inside out. If we knew that, we wouldn't be suffering. We never heard that what we've got going for us always trumps what our problems are. We never heard that we had innate mental health. And so we're in this classroom, in this discussion. Andy, the gardener, Sid is talking in the impersonal. He's talking about pointing to truth. And over here is just ideas and concepts, and this is a completely different classroom. But if you're showing up to these videos and you're coaching and you're learning in this classroom mindset, there is no traction to be had there. You're scuffling around looking for information and content and application and techniques and how do I's. You're just in the wrong classroom, that's all. I mean, totally innocently, we all do that. But there's another classroom over here where we're talking impersonally about truths. And as the awesomeness of those truths and the simplicity of them touch our hearts, we change. And then when we revisit this room, it looks different. Someone's changed the furniture around when we weren't looking. And life looks different to us. but you want to get in the right room. That's what speaks to me from reading Sid's book here. And there was one final bit that I just thought was beautiful I wanted to end on. It's a lesson in shorthand, this chapter. And it says, I was experiencing the greatest feeling of tranquility. I can't exactly express how I felt. It was as if all the stress had left my body, and I enjoyed a wonderful peace of mind. That's what happens if you are listening in this room. That's how you know you're in the right room. A feeling of tranquility, the stress melting out of your body and leaving you with a beautiful peace of mind. Isn't that cool? That's just how you know you're in the right room. If that isn't your experience, it's not a problem. It's just you're in the wrong room. There's a different place to look. And that's how you know when you've found it. So I really hope you've enjoyed this book exploration with me. I certainly have. And let me know if you like us when we cover these books and you get to read along together, if it's helpful for you to be guided through the books in this way. Just share in the Facebook group. I always love to hear from you and your insights from these final chapters and how the book left you feeling as well. All right, guys, back with another course soon. Take care. Bye.